can you be pro-life and pro-contraception? That is a question that has been circling for quite a long time. And there is a definitive answer to that. And so I want to share that answer with you today and explain why the answer is no. You can't actually be pro-life and pro-contraception. So let's get into the details of why that is. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created, and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it is not, you are in the right place. I pray that this blesses you, so let's get to it. Just to kind of forewarn you guys before I really get into the details of this podcast, I do have my 5-month-old daughter with me here today. She's hanging out while I record this. So if you hear any background noise, it's probably her. So I apologize for that in advance. But anyways, let's get into the nuts and bolts today of why you cannot be pro-life and pro-contraception. So let's talk about what does it mean to be pro-life? I mean, I think it's kind of self-explanatory. I know that abortion is a very controversial topic these days, obviously. And so being in the position of pro-life means that you are against abortion. And truly being in the position of pro-life means that you are against abortion from the moment of conception. I think that's a really important distinction to make about being pro-life is being against abortion, being pro-life from the moment of conception. In our world, in our culture, there are a lot, I think honestly, probably the majority of people that are okay with abortion up to a specific amount of time, right? Oftentimes it's just first trimester. And so, you know, there's a lot of people that are kind of in the middle like that, but truly being pro-life is being against abortion from the moment of conception. Now, this podcast is not, or this specific episode is not for the purpose of going into really like the reason why that is truly being pro-life, but I'm just trying to set up my definitions here before I really get into why you cannot be pro-contraception with being pro-life. Now, the important thing with being pro-life from the moment of conception is that at the moment of conception, there is a brand new human life, okay? Once that egg and sperm come together at the moment of fertilization, at the moment of conception, brand new human life. And so what we know abortion to be is a killing of that new human life, right? And so being pro-life is really important in order to save the lives of these little humans, of these babies that have a threat to their life. So being pro-life in this position, why can you not also be pro-contraception? It really just comes down to how contraception works. So when I say contraception right now, I am talking about the pill. I'm talking about a hormonal IUD. I'm talking about the Depo-Provera shot. All of these hormonal contraceptive types, we cannot be pro these contraceptives if we are pro-life. So really diving deep into, okay, how do these work then? Why can't you be for these contraceptives? Because doesn't a contraceptive prevent life from even being conceived, right? That's the point of a contraceptive. It's contraception. It is against conception. Well, with being against conception, contraceptives can also act as what's called an abortifacient. And so what this means is it is something that can have an abortive effect if a child is conceived. We all know that no contraceptive is 100% effective. Even as a natural family planning instructor, I tell my clients, even charting your cycle is not 100% effective. The only 100% effective means of avoiding pregnancy is complete abstinence. And so with contraceptives, there is a possibility of conception occurring. Now, with that possibility, there are different modes that these hormonal contraceptives take so that even if a life is conceived, that life will not be able to continue to live. And that's something really hard to hear. It's something real that's like a gut-wrenching thing if you think about it. And so I'm going to be explaining to you guys exactly how that works, because we have to know we have to know our stuff, right? Like, we need to know the reasons why. We have to know exactly what these contraceptives are doing, because doctors that are prescribing them are not telling you this information. And it's such a deprivation to not know exactly the modes of how contraceptives work and why they can act as an abortifacient. So the first mode of contraceptives are to suppress ovulation, right? Because if there's no ovulation, then there's no egg. And if there's no egg, then there's no pregnancy. So a healthy cycling woman is going to ovulate once a month. And that one time a month is around the time that she's going to be fertile, because that egg is released. And then if she has intercourse, the possibility of sperm fertilizing that egg is there. So a pregnancy could occur. So what the first mode of a hormonal contraceptives is to suppress that ovulation from happening. Okay, so it has to do a lot of work on the hormones in order to kind of imbalance them in a way where the woman's body her hormones are not ebbing and flowing as they should. There's synthetic hormones that are involved with these hormonal contraceptives that stop that function of a woman ovulating every cycle. And so that's a really important thing. Ovulation is a very, very important thing, just for the sake of our health and, of course, for the sake of our fertility. So when we're taking a contraceptive, the first mode is that it's going to try to suppress that ovulation. Okay, the second mode is that it's also going to dry up a woman's cervical mucus. Again, if you've been listening to my podcast for any more than 5 minutes, you will know that a lot of my work has to do with cervical mucus. That is a way, like the number one way to figure out a woman's fertility. You can learn so much about a woman's hormones if she's charting what her cervical mucus is looking like. So I have a whole podcast explaining that. I'll link that in the show notes below. But what a hormonal contraceptive does to the mucus is that it dries it up. Sperm love cervical mucus. I bet you thought you wouldn't hear that phrase today, but sperm truly loves cervical mucus. And so if you dry up the cervical mucus, the sperm will then not be able to travel through that mucus to get to the egg, where they need to go, which would be the egg, right? And then in theory, pregnancy wouldn't occur. Okay, so that is the first and second modes of action on how contraceptives act in a contraceptive way. Now, what happens if a woman has a breakthrough ovulation, which means that she ovulates while she's on the pill or has an IUD or whatever it is, right? Let's say she does ovulate, because it is possible that she can ovulate. It's not 100% effective. So let's say she does ovulate, and then let's say that the contraceptive doesn't actually dry up that mucus in the way that it needs to. So therefore, a sperm would actually be able to meet the egg, and there you have it, conception. What happens if those two modes fail? Well, the third mode of action, here's where the abortifacient comes in. The third mode of action is that within the uterus, there is a uterine lining, and that lining is built up every single cycle, and it's a bunch of blood cells, okay? And so when a woman has her period, that is the uterine lining shedding. What her period is, the bleeding that she's seeing, is the uterine lining. Now, if a woman is pregnant, the body recognizes, oh, okay, I need to keep that uterine lining. I don't want to shed it, because if there is a baby that was conceived, this is where that baby is going to implant. the baby is going to implant within the uterine lining. So what happens, the third mode of action with the contraceptive is that it dries up the uterine lining, so that if a child is conceived and that human life travels through the fallopian tube and tries to implant in the uterus, that human life will not be able to implant. And then from there, that the life will not be able to receive the nutrients that it needs. And so that new life will die. And this is what is not being told to women, to young girls, to all women that are taking these contraceptives. It's not told. And so if we want to say that we are pro-life, if we want to say that we want to preserve life from the moment of conception, then we cannot be pro-contraceptive. We cannot be something that can act as an abortifacient. Now, does that happen every single, does a breakthrough ovulation happen every single cycle when a woman's on on the pill or whatever she's on? Probably not. But if there is any sort of possibility that a new life could be conceived and not be able to continue its life because of this certain medication that this woman is on, no matter what she's on it for, whether it's for contraceptive purposes or even if it's for quote unquote health purposes, the same mode of actions apply. So if we are saying that we are pro-life and we want to preserve life from the moment of conception, we want to take away the threat to these newly formed lives, then we cannot be for something that has the possibility of taking their lives away. And that is how a hormonal contraceptive acts. So what is the solution, right? What can we be pro? What can we be for? Because it's not always prudent for a couple to have more babies, right? There are very legitimate reasons for couples to pray and decide that they need to postpone pregnancy, either for a temporary amount of time or indefinitely. There are specific reasons for that. And so what is the answer? Natural family planning is the answer. Another name for it is fertility awareness-based methods. If a woman is charting her cycle, and if she's looking for these signs that her body tells her about her hormones, about her fertility, she can be so much more empowered. And if she's married, the couple can be so much more empowered by knowing their fertility, by knowing their cycle, by knowing when she is fertile, right? A woman is not fertile at all times. And so there's a specific amount of time within each menstrual cycle that if she were to have intercourse, that pregnancy could be possible. So with natural family planning, fertility awareness-based methods, by charting her cycle, she can know exactly when that fertile window is, so that if the couple is trying to avoid pregnancy, then they would avoid intercourse during that fertile window. Now, here's the reason why we can be pro-life and also be pro-NFP. It's because, first of all, it's completely natural, right? Natural family planning. So there's no abortive effect to it, right? There's no side effects to it at all. Even just on like a medical level, there's no side effects to it at all, right? It's completely natural. But also, it cannot be contraceptive. In just the definition of what it means to be a contraceptive, natural family planning is not. And here's the reason why. Contraception, just in the etymology of the word, we have contra and ception, right? So against conception. If we are kind of putting on our philosophy hats here for just a second, right? You cannot be against something that doesn't even have the possibility to exist. Okay, so let me kind of explain that out. So with abstinence, you are not even giving conception the possibility to exist, because if you are abstinent, you cannot get pregnant. That's just the point blank. So being against conception would mean that conception has to have the ability to exist. So that's why contraceptives are called contraceptives, because a woman who is on a contraceptive using it for the sake of contraception, she is sexually active, she is having intercourse, but she's trying to go against the natural consequence of intercourse, which is a baby. And so you're going against the possibility of conception, right? So you have that possibility of conception with the act of intercourse, but then you're you're acting against that possibility by using the contraceptive. Now, again, we know that that's not 100% effective, and I've already listed out why. But with natural family planning, when you are staying abstinent during the fertile window, you are not even giving conception the possibility to exist. So you cannot be against it if it doesn't even have the potential to exist. So in just the definition of the word contraceptives or contraception, natural family planning cannot be contraception. And so this is why we can be pro-life and pro-NFP, but we cannot be pro-life and pro-contraception. So being pro-life does not mean that every single act of intercourse between a married couple has to result in pregnancy. First of all, our bodies aren't even created that way. A woman's body is not fertile all the time. She's only fertile for that short fertile window of every cycle. So there may be prudent times within a couple's lives where it might be a prudent time to postpone pregnancy. And so this is a way that we can do it with still maintaining our pro-life stance, right? Not putting any risk to a possible pregnancy or to a possible new life, right? We're not posing any of that. We are just staying abstinent during that fertile window so that conception can't exist. It can't happen. Now, the reason that this is not also 100% effective is because a married couple isn't always going to stay abstinent, right? That wouldn't be healthy for that couple. And so they are just staying abstinent during the fertile window. So by using natural family planning or learning how to chart their cycles, they're learning how to pinpoint that fertile window. Well, there are 1% to 2% of times where that fertile window is found incorrectly, right? And so that's how a pregnancy could occur with a natural form of postponing pregnancy like that. But I will say the efficacy of natural family planning for a couple that is using it correctly can be up to 99% effective. NFP is as effective as you make it. So if you're charting correctly and if you have an instructor and you're learning how to do it correctly and you're looking for your mucus with 100% observations, then yes, it can be just as effective, if not more effective, up to 99% effective to postpone pregnancy for those times where it is prudent to do so. So this is why we can still remain in a pro-life stance, because we're not posing any harm to the possibility of a new life. If you are intrigued by my explanation of charting and you want to learn more about that, maybe you even want to learn how to chart yourself, right? It is so empowering to learn just about your fertility, about your body, the way it works. You can see even hormone balances on a chart. It's truly amazing. I am an NFP instructor. I do teach women and couples how to chart their cycles for the sake of avoiding, but also possibly the sake of achieving pregnancy too. And then I also work with single women as well, just for the sake of monitoring their health. Because again, if you can see hormonal patterns on a chart, that can even be helpful in the medical setting as well. So I teach anyone and everyone. So if you are interested in learning how to chart your cycle, please visit truthandfertility.com. There is a contact button at the top, and you can just send me a message to say that you are interested in learning about the process. We can have a completely free discovery call, or even just email chat back and forth to talk about the process and what it looks like, all of that good stuff. And I am sure that you are going to love it. So Again, that's truthandfertility.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. If you ever have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, just through my website, truthandfertility.com, in that contact area. I would love to take questions, even ideas for more content, whatever. I want to give you what you want, right? I want to explain the topics that you are interested and excited to hear about. Also, if you have a minute, if you could leave me a 5-star review if you're enjoying this podcast, that would help me tremendously as well. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with me, and I will talk to you again next week.